Well, a very good morning to all of you and welcome to another care session. This is the fourth session that we have held over the last 4 weeks, and hundreds of you have registered, you've booked your free tickets, and you have joined us week on week to dig deeper into some of the causes that care is involved in. It has been fantastic to connect with you in this way on Thursday mornings from 11 o'clock until 11:30. And I just want to say, on behalf of all of the team at CARE, thank you so for sending feedback, for getting in touch through email and in the comments as well. If you're joining us this morning on Facebook Live or on YouTube Live, then you are very welcome, and do please continue to let us know where you're watching from, where you're joining us from, and anything helpful that is said during this session. We'd love to hear from you. Care Sessions is all about connecting you and informing you with some of the big issues of our day. And for this final care session of the summer, we are looking at the issue of free speech. It's an issue that matters deeply to us as Christians, but not just to Christians, to all in society. Freedom of speech is part of our legacy and heritage as a nation, and yet perhaps, or not even perhaps, definitely today, there is disturbing evidence of how free speech is under threat as never before. And so it is a timely cause for us to be discussing together. And I want to welcome to the care session this morning, to help me dig deeper into this cause, I want to welcome CARE's Chief Executive, Nola Leach, and our Chairman and Co-founder, Lyndon Bowring. Nola, Lyndon, welcome again to Care Sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're thrilled to be with you.
Well, I am thrilled to see you both again. It's been a couple of weeks since we met together like this for the first care session, and I'm just delighted that you've both found time to come and join us again and to connect with the hundreds of people who have been joining us week on week and are joining us again this morning. Well, we're going to be talking then about free speech, this huge topic. And let me say right from the start, we're just going to skim the surface of this cause. We're not going to be able to answer any and every question that you might have in this session, but we would love to help you nevertheless. So if you do have a question and it doesn't get answered, do put it in the comments below the video on Facebook, on YouTube, and we promise, here's our solemn commitment to you, we will get back to you. We will follow up in any way that we can. And just to let you know right now, we're planning to do more care sessions in the future as well. So we may be able to answer it at some point in the future. But without further ado, Nola, I'm going to come to you first, if I may. And a nice, easy question to start the session. Free speech. What do we mean by free speech?
Yeah, free speech basically is the right to express our opinions without any form of censorship or restraint.
I mean, Lyndon, she's absolutely nailed it, hasn't she?
Absolutely. Yeah, and when you look at the Bible has this great tension, thrilling tension, justice and truth. And throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, Jesus himself said he was the truth. And we as Christians want to proclaim the truth. At the same time, exercising justice to those who have a totally different point of view as us. And we want to allow them the freedom to speak their truth as they see it, and let people weigh up and evaluate this openness and honesty without restraint, without censorship, decide themselves what the true truth is for them.
Nola, why do you think free speech is so important for Christians? Why as believers in Jesus do we care about this cause?
I think it's fundamental to all sorts of rights in society. And as Lyndon's already indicated, I mean, we have to speak up. We have to be a voice for the voiceless. We have to have courage, and we have to speak that truth in love. That's what we're called to do. I mean, we're called to give a reason for the hope that's within us. And we really have a responsibility to do that, as well as it being good for a healthy society.
And I realized that freedom of speech is the cornerstone on which all other precious freedoms depend. Freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of ownership of property, freedom of politicians to act with integrity. It's the cornerstone. And if we threaten freedom of speech, every other freedom is ultimately in danger.
Yes, it undermines democracy, doesn't it? And actually, it's just so fundamental. I mean, it's, you know, the Voltaire statement. I might not agree with you, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And we have to do that. That's healthy, but it's how we do it. Of course, it's important, isn't it?
I guess that's the other tension that we find in the Bible between the call to speak justice and truth into our societies, and yet some really very stunning but also stern warnings about how we communicate that truth. Think of what James says about the power of words and the power of the tongue. It's like a spark that sets a forest on fire. And so we do have that responsibility, don't we, Lyndon?
And if we're honest, every one of us has said things to loved ones and friends we trust and respect, which we wish we hadn't said in the tone in which it was said it. The power of the words to bless and encourage and exhort, and the power of the words to undermine and hurt and damage and bully sometimes. So power of the words, good on the one hand, serious damage on the other. So as you say, it's how we speak the truth.
And we want to stand up for free speech, but we also want to exercise that right in a gracious and kind way. Lyndon, in a recent letter that you wrote to CARE supporters, you wrote about this cause of free speech. Can I ask, what moved your heart to write to our supporters about this cause?
Well, it was the sense of growing intolerance. People saying sometimes student unions, the invited speaker coming, they discovered the invited speaker had a different viewpoint to them. So they said, we will not have this public figure to speak to us because he or she doesn't agree with our way of thinking. I mean, that is so damaging. Tolerance is about being absolutely convinced of your own opinion, at the same time allowing others to express their opinion. And it struck me as we were speaking earlier, James, that it's our duty of our politicians, duty of our press, duty of our royal family, duty of the leaders in society, to exercise restraint in speech and be an example to us all how to agree to disagree without being disagreeable. And as church leaders, clergy, all of us have that responsibility, not legally enforced upon us, but out of personal restraint. James 3, as you said, just controlling the tongue.
It's a wonderful reminder to us, a challenge to us as well. We've said it before, we say it again, that even as we champion free speech, that we need to champion free speech in a gracious and a kind way. So when we agitate for it, we do so in a loving and gracious way. I think it might be helpful to just clarify what the law says about free speech. Nola, I wonder if I can come to you and just ask, is free speech protected by law in this country?
Yeah, at the moment it absolutely is. I mean, Article 10 of in 1998 there was a Human Rights Act, and Article 10 affirms very strongly the freedom of expression because of the reasons that we've mentioned already. And then, of course, we could go right back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which again, freedom of expression, freedom of belief is there enshrined in law. And I think, just, you know, perhaps as an aside, you know, as Christians, when we see what's happening, and there are very worrying things happening, it has to be said, but we mustn't give up. We must have the courage, because at this moment in time, we have that freedom that we must exert wisely.
I guess it's one of those strange things, isn't it? Because Lyndon, you talked about the evidences and sense of a growing intolerance in our society, and yet the letter of the law does guarantee freedom of expression to individuals in our country, in our nation. And Nola, are there exceptions to free speech and that absolute right to speak what we want?
Yes, there are restrictions, but there are very, very few, and they have to do with national security and things around public safety. But I think we can all recognise that those are important reasons why you might have to temper that freedom of speech. But generally speaking, yes, we have the right to speak.
Lyndon, why do you think there is a growing intolerance in our society? Why are speakers being no-platformed at universities? Why have there been street preachers who have been arrested for preaching well-known, beloved Bible texts? What is happening, do you think, behind that?
I think in identity politics, people are identifying with those whom they think are the oppressed, the minorities, and they just wanted to defend that minorities' way of thinking, way of conducting. And here comes a Bible preacher saying, the Bible says, and they're so incensed, and they have this spirit of intolerance. They will not allow others to have a say which is contrary to what they think, they believe, they conduct. And it's so damaging.
Mm-hmm.
Nola, do you think that as well as being a societal issue, a struggle within society for freedom of expression, free speech, freedom of thought, that as Christians, there's another perspective on this, that this is also a spiritual battle that's happening in our communities?
Yes, I would definitely say that. I mean, we've seen over the years, haven't we, that there is a very definite move in education and society, that there is a secular agenda. And if we're talking about freedom of expression for religion and for religious belief, there is a very definite agenda that wants to move that out of society as no longer having a place. And that is very worrying. And I think the trends to police not just what's said, but what is thought, which again is something which is very, very disturbing. But yes, there are definitely spiritual forces at work. There is no doubt about that.
And we would agree that there are examples of awful hate speech which generate hatred and possible violence, certainly bullying, marginalization. And this sort of activity is not wholesome, it's not good practice for a society and a community. So we must identify the examples of hate speech. It's quite a difficult situation for politics in terms of legislation. We must address the fact, mustn't we?
Yes, we must. Yeah. I think, though, that there is if we're talking about the legal situation, I think attempts to change the law to limit freedom of expression, we don't need to change the law. The regulations are there. And I think if you look around the world, I mean, hate speech is a very it's a trendy thing to talk about, actually. But if we look around the world in Europe, I mean, places like Malta, Finland, Austria, Ireland, nearer to home, there are all moves to introduce new legislation. But actually, it's not effective at addressing some of the issues that need to be addressed.
I guess what you're getting at there is there's a limit to what the law can actually accomplish when it comes to a person's conscience, a person's heart, a person's mind. And again, Lyndon, I'm so struck as well by what you just said, that I think, or would you say, Nola, for example, as Christians, we can confidently condemn hate speech as wrong, as sinful, as something that we will not stand for, while at the same time defending the right to express opinions that others may disagree with or find very disagreeable?
Absolutely. I mean, if we look at the example of Jesus, there were occasions when he spoke very strongly about things, but he did it, even though he spoke very strongly, we know that the way he lived, the way he related to people was with love. And I think that's what we have to do and we have to strive for. It's not easy.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think at CARE, we wrestle with this tension individually, as a team, as an organization. Lyndon, what would you say to anyone watching this who really feels very, very concerned about the direction of travel and can envisage a situation, maybe even in a decade's time or less, where our freedom as Christians to speak the truth and love into society is largely evaporated? What would you say to them?
Just picking up on Nola's point, the Scottish Hate Crimes Bill that's being considered at the moment has a clause in it that if there are unintended consequences, you are guilty. Unintended consequences of what you say. And so I would say to anyone who's concerned as we are, keep your connection with CARE. We have appointed a full-time officer to concentrate on this subject alone. And we have a fantastic 10 ways to pray about the whole subject of freedom of speech. That's available free of charge. And if God's blessed you financially and you're able to support us, we need your support financially on a regular basis, on a one-off basis, in whatever way. So we will, on your behalf, campaign in all that we can possibly do.
That's fantastic. We have to continue to campaign for this cause of free speech, because, as we've said already, it's not just for the benefit of Christians, it's for the benefit of all in society. I sometimes think that point can get missed, that we don't, this is one way that at CARE we advocate on behalf of other minorities and vulnerable groups, because we say freedom of expression is for everyone. It's free before God, made in his image. We are those who have been given the ability to choose. And I read something yesterday, faith is not faith if it's coerced. It's faith if it's a voluntary decision of the will, whereby I as an individual choose to attend church and worship God. And that's so important, that voluntary principle, isn't it?
And I want to encourage those watching, to say CARE is not the only organization involved in this. I won't go into naming them all, but there are a raft of fantastic Christian and operations of no faith at all who are championing the freedom of speech. So be encouraged. Don't be dismayed. Don't be put down. But if you're a CARE supporter or you're interested in becoming a CARE supporter, join us. Thank you.
Can I add to that as well? I think it's really, really important. We said, how can we do it? I think it's really important that we are informed and well informed, because it is so easy to have a knee-jerk reaction to something which isn't quite the truth. And I think that's one of the things that we're privileged to be able to do for our supporters through our website, through Impact that goes out weekly, to give you the information so that we are informed and then we can react in the right way.
So if we just summarize where we've come from, we've talked about the importance of this issue. Free speech is protected in law, but there's also a concept called hate speech, and there's a tension that then exists for politicians and policymakers. How do you define what hate speech is? That's one of the great difficulties. And as Christians, we want to champion the cause of free speech, but we want to do so in a way that is respectful and gracious and loving, and taking into account all of Jesus's commands about speaking the truth in love into our society. We do this for everyone. And Nola, Lyndon, you've alluded to this already. There's a live example of a hate crime bill up in Scotland before the Scottish Parliament. It was introduced, the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Bill, on the 23rd of April 2020. It's currently being considered by the lead committee, the Justice Committee, who will make a recommendation to the remainder of the Parliament about what needs to be done with this bill. Nola, Christians, campaigners, artists, actors, lawyers, police officers, academics, they're all speaking out. There's a real storm brewing. What's this bill and what's the issue with it?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's a very, very badly drafted bill, which will be arbitrarily enforced. And as we've already alluded to, it's seeking to bring together a number of pieces of legislation and have this new hate crime bill to outlaw hate crime. And really, as we've said, it's about it's focusing on stirring up hatred, but it is so vague in its, it covers so much, and it's policing thought as well as action. As Lyndon's already said, you don't have to prove intent. If someone is offended under this law, if they just feel offended, then in theory, they can go to the police and they can make a complaint, and someone could end up actually in prison for 7 years. Now, that's the extreme, but it shows how badly thought through it is, and it is not needed, but it is very worrying. They're also extending some of the characteristics of people who should be protected, and extending it, for example, to sexual orientation and other things, which again present challenges, because already there are protected areas in the existing legislation for example, for age, for gender, for disability, for religion, and so on. So it's badly drafted, it will be arbitrarily enforced, and there are real concerns right across society, as you've indicated, not just from Christians, about this, because it's policing what happens not just in the public sphere either, but privately. And
we're standing together, shoulder to shoulder, with Peter Tatchell, Rowan Atkinson, a whole host of people with whom we wouldn't necessarily agree on other matters, but who are concerned about this vital cornerstone of our democracy, the freedom to speak the truth or speak our convictions in a public way.
And I can tell people watching on YouTube, Facebook, I was involved in a call yesterday and this morning about this very issue. And so it's something that at CARE we are alive to, alert to, and are working through. And we submitted a response to the Justice Committee where we made the argument that this bill is not needed, that there exists already considerable protections. This is a theme that we find again and again, that in Europe, Nola, you've said it already, that hate speech, hate crime laws are a trendy thing. But isn't there an argument to say it's more about appearances, it's more about appearing to do the right thing than actually meeting a genuine need in policy?
Certainly. I mean, I think Lyndon alluded to it earlier on, actually. I think there are those who are genuinely concerned that there are people who are being discriminated against and feel that they want to do something. But as we said, it's not needed. And these sort of, the way you think in this way, they do sort of run in patterns, and there are certain trendy ideas that everybody seems to get on the bandwagon with. But we have to be alert, because if we're not, we're sleepwalking into a situation which has those unintended consequences.
Lyndon, you've mentioned already that CARE has a dedicated policy officer working specifically on this issue. And so for the benefit of people watching on YouTube, on Facebook as well, I wonder if you could just tell us, what is CARE doing to try to champion the cause of freedom of thought, freedom of expression, religious liberty in our nation?
Well, most of us realize that we're out of the European Union. But what many people don't realize, we are still in, thank God, still in the Council of Europe. This is a group that's been in existence for many, many years, decades, and it represents 49 countries across Europe. And recently, our policy officer, working particularly with Sir Jeffrey Donaldson MP, put a motion before the council, which was agreed. There should be, every government, every one of the 49 should respect the freedom of speech and the freedom of Christians to go about in a normal way and manifest their faith in a natural, unthreatening way. And it was passed. Now, it doesn't automatically become law as such. It sent a wonderful signal. So we thank God for our policy officer. Thank God for Sir Jeffrey Donaldson and other European members of the council. That was one. Some years ago, Nola and I worked very closely with Philip Blond of Res Publica, and we did a freedom of speech, freedom of religion report, which received great coverage across the media. So just to encourage you who are listening, you who are watching, CARE is being vigilant. We're doing all we can, and we'll do it in your name, because so often in these situations, we need experts alongside those politicians and decision makers to make the cause, which some of us would never be able to do on our own. So Thank you for standing with us.
Absolutely. I want to echo that. I feel it sometimes so strongly that sounds very cliche, but I feel like I would burst, because the truth of the matter is that so many of you watching have stood with us for many, many years. And it is absolutely true to say that we cannot, could not, never will be able to do what we do without your help, without your support. And much of what we are doing on this cause is behind the scenes. And Nola, if someone's watching and they were to wonder in their hearts, are there Christians in Westminster, in Holyrood, who are alert to these dangers, and are we working with them? Is that true?
It's definitely true. It's definitely true. And it's our privilege actually to be there to support them and give them what they need to enable them to fight these issues. But just to go back as well, I think it's a real plus that we've got people who aren't necessarily Christian who are really concerned about this. And so it's a joint voice, and that is even more effective, I think. But yes, we will work tirelessly and pray, and I would urge people to pray for those politicians who are standing for their Christian faith and working in this area. It's hard.
Could I say to you who are watching, you may recognize the older faces of myself and Nola, and we're still here, totally committed. And we want you to know that there are younger faces like James there and his team who are carrying on this baton. So fear not for the future. It's in safe hands, God's hands, and his servants, young, coming up, energetic, enthusiastic, with a vision as great, if not bigger, than mine and Nola. So be encouraged today.
There's much work that has been done. There's much work still to do. And as we just draw this session to a close, I'm struck again by how quickly the time goes on these sessions. But Nola, you've mentioned already how important it is that people are informed on these issues. So if someone watching wants to become more informed on the cause of free speech and religious liberty, what practical steps can they take?
Yeah, I think there are very practical steps in terms of some of the resources that we're able to support people with. So I would suggest go to the CARE website. In very simple terms there, that the issues are explained, but there are also more in-depth pieces that help you understand and get a grip with things. Impact, which is the email that goes out every week, keeping people really up to date with what's been happening that week. And again, can point to more in-depth material if it's needed. So material to pray for when there is action to take. So the website, Impact, we have the 10 ways to pray on this issue, which is a leaflet, which has been really, really helpful for people. So yes, use those resources and write to us, email to us. You may have questions. We are only too willing to help you in that situation, to think about them.
And James, could I say to that person who's watching us, who has supported us financially year upon year upon year, can I say to you, thank you in the Lord's name, because without supporters like yourself, we could not accomplish what God's given us to do. So thank you. Keep it up. God bless you in every way.
Fantastic. And Lyndon, very finally from you, if someone was to pray into this issue, wanted to pray up to date, wanted to pray about a specific issue connected with free speech, what would you encourage them to pray right now? What should and could their prayer be right now about this cause of free speech?
I think to pray God's favor upon CARE, upon our other Christian organizations working in this area, and secular outfits too. May the God's gracious, merciful favor would come upon us in heaps and bounds, and we'd see his success again in coming days.
Fantastic. Well, this actually brings us to an end, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, it's too short a time to spend with you. Such a big topic for us to skim the surface of, but I am really, really thrilled that so many of you have joined us week on week for the past 4 weeks, from looking at Christian engagement in politics to compassionate campaigning on abortion to human trafficking and now free speech. And all of these sessions are available to watch again on our YouTube channel. And if you are watching on YouTube now, can I encourage you to subscribe to our channel, and that way you'll get updates whenever we put new content up there. And if you're watching on Facebook as well, I would love for you to like and follow our Facebook page. It's another brilliant way of connecting with our ministry. And I've got two other bits of fantastic news for you all. Firstly, if you are registered with us, if you've signed up for a ticket, after this session, you are going to receive some complimentary resources to help you dig deeper into this vital cause of free speech. So that's going to be on its way to you in just a few hours' time. And then secondly, by popular demand, this is not the end of CARE sessions. We have decided that we are going to carry on meeting like this, connecting with you. And the very next session that we are planning is going to be brilliant. We're going to extend the amount of time that we spend with you, and we're going to do it on the day that Parliament at Westminster returns from summer recess. And we're going to inform you about some of the challenges that are coming over the horizon and some of the really exciting opportunities that we've identified for Christians to make a real impact in the corridors of power. So we'll be in touch with you about all of that in the coming days and weeks. Thank you again to all of you for joining with us. Thank you to Nola and to Lyndon. And finally, I should have said this in previous sessions. I'm going to say it now. There are people who you will not see who have been working incredibly hard behind the scenes. I'm going to name them now. Michelle, who's our events coordinator, Dan, who is our producer, Joel, who's our graphic designer. You've met Naomi already, Celia Bowring as well, who have been working so diligently to prepare resources, set up these sessions, make them all possible. And I just want to thank all of them on your behalf, because without them, you wouldn't even see me, Nola and Lyndon. So we're very grateful to them as well. To all of you, thank you again for joining with us. Do let us know any questions, comments, feedback. Put them in the comments below. God bless you all, and hopefully see you in a few weeks' time.
Bye.
Bye.